This guy was known as Britain's naughtiest kid. Not just that, he had 2 jail sentences, one for as long as 18 months, to show for it. And just about 2 years after leaving jail, he went on at the young age of 24 to start a business that is raking in a whopping £350,000 per annum, £30,000 per month, and is living his best life now. Shocking, isn't it? Perhaps you are a parent of a child that you currently see as the naughtiest kid in town or in the entire country. Now, this guy's story will not just inspire you, but it might change something in your psyche. And as usual, I'm also going to give you 3 practical tips that you can apply now to make your parenting experience more enjoyable for both yourself and the young person. So please stay tuned. If you're raising a preteen or a teenager, I would encourage you to hit the follow and subscribe button, because every week we release practical, easy to apply tools that would help your parenting experience. I would also encourage you to like and share so you can get this video to other people. So let's go into the story. The guy's name is Tom Roberts. And I found his story very interesting because I can relate with a lot of the things he's saying about himself. And this is not about me. I'll try my best not to make it about me. It's about Tom. And so we'll stay on point. But at some point, I'll be telling you a few things about myself because I find it very similar, my experience growing up. So Tom, like every child, was a very curious child. You know, most children curious, wanting to know things. But unlike a lot of children, he was always getting into trouble, fighting, talking back to adults, and all sorts of trouble. I don't know if you have met any of such children, but there are children like that. I was one of those kind of children. And just to give you one of the experiences I had in my own case, I met a parent of one of my childhood friends, the mom of one of my childhood friends, about 15 years later, because they relocated to a different town. So about 15 years later, she saw an adult me. And she looked at me for close to 5 to 10 minutes and said, "Is it possible for a human being to change this much?" And that was because the young me she knew was this young boy who parents would tell their children not to come close to. I was a menace, absolute menace. My dad will always say I was possessed. And I'm going to talk a bit about that labeling of children. But that was, the kind of child Tom was growing up. And so he wouldn't stop getting into trouble, always getting into all sorts of trouble. And that even became worse when his dad died at some point. And not too long, I think about a couple of weeks before he graduated from primary school, he was expelled from school because he got into another big trouble. And his mom at that point thought, what would she do? She came across this advertisement on a magazine about this reality show called Mr. Drew's School for Boys. And it's like a reality show where children with challenging behavior are brought together and are supported kind of to improve their life and their behavior. And the parents are also supported in the background because, man, it's a lot of work to raise children with challenging behavior. And so his mom put him forward for this reality show, and he eventually got in. And that's where he earned the title, Britain's Naughtiest Child. And on that show, everybody saw that he was a specially difficult child because he would climb through windows, talk back at adults, insult people, get into fights constantly. And he was there for 4 weeks. He would later say that he doesn't think that whole show did much to help him. But he was there for 4 weeks and eventually left. Got into secondary school. 3 months into secondary school, he was also expelled from secondary school. But fortunately for him, they enrolled him in a special school where he was able to finish successfully and passed all his GCSE. and also went on to earn a level 3 and level 2 in business studies. But even after going through all of that, he still struggled to manage his temper and his emotions. And so he eventually went on and got into serious trouble where he punched someone in the face. And for that, he got a sentence of 11 months. But fortunately for him, that was suspended for 18 months. And so he was expected to be good for up to 18 months, but not quite 1 year after that. He got into another fight in a nightclub and broke someone's jaw. And so in the same court, this time he was sentenced to 18 months and went to juvenile correction center or juvenile institution. And while he was there, he said he had time to really reflect. One of the things he found really helpful was the routine, the structure in the system. So there's a fixed time where people have their lunch, fixed time where they go out for exercise and all sorts of things and for walks, fixed times where they go to sleep. So he found that very helpful because I think he was later diagnosed of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and the clue is in the name, hyperactivity. Most children with ADHD struggle with attentiveness or attention. They always, hyperactive, doing all sorts of things. And in my case, I remember I didn't have any form of help. My dad, I can't remember ever having any chat with my dad anywhere about anything. But I found this calming musics, Yanni, Enya, and all of these musics, and I started listening to them. And I remember my older brother stroking me one day and saying, people listen to music that, gives them high. I don't know about where you are, but in Nigeria, most music is about, if you listen to Afro music, you understand what I'm saying, it's mostly about high. And it's like, people listen to music that raise their spirit. How comes you like listening to this music that make people feel sad? And I told him that my natural level of operation is up there. I'm naturally high. So it's the music that actually brings me to the normal level. And for him, while in prison, he found self-help books very interesting. So he was reading all sorts of self-help books. And so when he got out of prison in 2023, he quickly sought help from mentors and all and coaches and all of that. And not quite 2 years after he left prison, he had started a business. His business is about helping other people discover the best version of themselves. And as I speak to you, he is raking in £350,000 per annum, 30K every month from that business that he does. And just to put that in context, people with a PhD in the UK, that 350K will be about 10 times their salary. And I say this, when I first left the university after my PhD, the first job offer I got was for 31K per annum. And this guy is getting 30K per month. Now, what this tells you is that young person you're dealing with, that child that is looking like the naughtiest case you have ever had to deal with, has loads of potentials. All you need to do is to find the right tips and the right tools to help you work with them to get to where they ought to get. And in his interview, he said something where he said, when he looks back at that young person now, he sees a child who needed help and guidance and couldn't find. And that was the exact case I found myself in. I was this young child who had so much talent. I was doing everything. I remember writing poems at some points, athletics at some points, music and all sorts of things, but zero guidance. And for most young people with this behavior, there's something in them crying out for help, crying out for guidance, crying out for support. And when they don't find those things, then it manifests in all sorts of, and again, ADHD is a spectrum. There are some very extreme, manifestations, but for most young people, guidance, some form of guidance will be helpful. And so what I'm going to do now is just to give you 3 tips that you'll find very helpful in supporting that your young person. But before we go into the tips, like I said, remember to hit the follow button or the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our contents. Also, if you like, share, and distribute the video, it will help the algorithm to get it to other people who would really need it. And that's the least you can do. Just hit that button and help it go to other people. Now, point number one, you need to focus on building relationships and not correction. For most parents, there's this tendency to always want to speed to corrections. Yeah, something is wrong. I need to tell you how to do it. There's something that precedes that. And that thing is called building a relationship. And when I say build a relationship, I'm not talking of some science or some complicated things. It's about spending your ordinary time with this young person, having ordinary conversations. Things like asking about their friends, asking about their favorite games, asking about the things that interest them, and avoiding the temptation to rush to advice and counsel and corrections. Just listening. See, that feeling that they are being listened to builds trust. And once that trust is in place, trust me, a lot of these conflicts will not even arise in the first place. And even when they arise, your instruction, your guidance will be taken more seriously because you're not just this correcting fluid that is always there trying to make corrections. So that's point number one. Point number two, you need to create boundaries and be consistent in the enforcement of the consequence of those boundaries. Very important. Now, look at what Tom said. When he got into prison, the routine and the structure in prison was one of the things that helped him. Now, it might look to most young people and they would resist some of these structures, but that's one of the best things you can do for them. Work with them to build routines and structures, timetables, things that they have to do every day and every time consistently that would help them build this structure into whatever chaos that comes with that teenage age or adolescent age. That is one thing that they would always find helpful. And another tip in making sure these structures and these boundaries are taken seriously is sometimes you bring them into the building or the decisions around those boundaries and those rules. So you discuss with them the implications of not following these things, the reason behind those things. For example, you have to do your homework. Why do they have to do their homework? The third and the final point is you need to separate the child from the behavior you're trying to deal with. And this is very important. Tom said something. He said, when he was branded Britain's naughtiest child or kid, it became difficult and hard for him to separate himself from that title. And there are a lot of parents who do not hesitate to label their children with all sorts of names. My dad used to, like I said, say I was possessed. Now, that feeling that I was possessed sometimes would give me justification for some of the crazy things I was doing. And so what you want to do is to separate the child from the behavior. So if they do not do their homework, rather than saying you are a lazy child, you could say something like, there would be consequence A, B, C, and D if you do not do or complete your homework. You see how that works? Now, that would help the child not just to know that this thing you're trying to correct is separate from them, but it will have a significant impact on their self-esteem. Because if you keep telling them there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with you, that's going to have a significant impact on their self-esteem. And that's not what you want. You don't want a broken child. A lot more difficult to deal with. A bigger problem to deal with is dealing with a broken child. So I hope you found this story inspiring. Tom, a young boy who was labeled Britain's naughtiest child, going on after serving prison term to turn his life around to a point of running a business that earns him over 350k per annum. 3 tips that would be helpful if you're dealing with a child with challenging behavior. Number 1, focus more on building relationships than on correction. Number 2, set clear boundaries and be consistent in the enforcement of the consequence of breaching those boundaries. And number 3, separate the child from the situation or the behavior you're trying to change. I hope you found this useful. Please leave a comment in the comment section telling me the specific behaviors you're dealing with. I'm interested in knowing. And also, I might be able to offer bespoke advice as per tips you could use to handle this specific situation. And sometimes some people just like to talk. I'm just a chat or a comment away. So leave a comment and we can engage in some form of conversation. Like and share so you get this to other people. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.